these people leading ORR and such, and heads of agencies, including the U.S. Border Patrol Acting Chief Carla Provost, Immigration's and Customs Enforcement Associate Director of Enforcement and Removal Operations Matthew Albence, Jonathan White, and James McHenry. They're all those are the people who testified, and apparently they all had no knowledge of this situation. Like they had no knowledge that this was turning out to be. Although they were warned that when this was being considered, apparently this is how it played out, really. So they were considering, they were workshopping it, they were doing a pilot program, and so these four, especially it seems like Jonathan White, the U.S. Public Health Services Commission Corps commander, said that this is not a good strategy. It's going to cause long-term harm on the minds of the kids. And they were like, okay, and then they decided to do it. That's pretty much how it seems like this whole situation played out. Now that this is actually in the place, obviously, they're going to need somewhere to go. These separated kids, they're going to need somewhere to go. But there's also now very disturbing reports coming out of a specific family. So, sorry, not a specific family, but abusive conditions coming out of this some detention centers. In what has been called a Guantanamo Bay for asylum seekers, which is a pretty bold claim. So Lindsay Toxlowski, who's an immigration attorney, arrived in Victorville, California, a few days after hundreds of immigrants, most of them refugees seeking political asylum, and these are the people who, again, we are not supposed to be really touching according to past practices. We're supposed to be prosecuting them, but now they have been now that they are being really prosecuted. So she arrived in California, Victorville, California, a few days after these people were transported to the medium security federal penitentiary there. So Lindsay, the immigration lawyer, had obtained from a partner organization a list of names of men she suspected were incarcerated at the Victorville prison, located about 90 miles from Los Angeles in the Mojave Desert. Her colleagues at the nonprofit immigration firm she leads had looked up the name in the Bureau's prisons online database, which revealed they are BOP numbers, and then she brought the information with her on a sheet of papers. So, yeah, so then she then kind of looked it up, and she kind of said, these are the people, I want to go check, are they incarcerated or not? So she approached the front desk and told the guard that she was there to speak to those people that she had wrote down, and those asylum seekers who were being incarcerated. So these were men, asylum seekers, who were being incarcerated. The day before, she had called the prison repeatedly to let them know she was coming, but she could not get through. The guard, flustered, called a few numbers, trying to get a supervisor to assist. When one finally arrived, she told Lindsay that the visitation hours were over, that she couldn't show up without making an appointment, and she would need permission from ICE to see any of the detainees. Everyone was surprised to see a returnee there, she said. She was a little suspicious. Like, what would an attorney there? Is something wrong? Are we in trouble? Well, maybe. Because the supervisor was friendly and polite until Lindsay handed her a list of names with the Bureau of Prisons number next to them. Then her tone changed. She wanted to know how Lindsay had gotten hold of those BOP numbers, claiming that it was not public information. She told her she would not be allowed to see anyone that day, and she should come back another time. Lindsay went in her car and began texting her colleagues to ask them to fax the facility to request access. Then a truck pulled up with a man in plain clothes behind the wheel. He asked her if she was the lady who would just try to get inside. Lindsay said she was, and that she was an attorney. He says, "You're going to need to leave the property immediately," he ordered. She asked if there was a problem. The response, "Can you hear me? You need to leave the property immediately." It's not very good. Uh-oh. As Lindsay pulled out and drove to the exit, the truck tailgated her all the way to the front gate. And by the way, this is not just to give you an idea of this Victorville prison. It's in the Mojave Desert. There's no trees. There's no plants. There's just like little tumbleweeds, and it's a huge complex. Kind of like stretches out for as far as the eye can see, and it's just picture in the middle of the desert, small buildings, fences that are very like barbed wire fences, tall poles everywhere, and it's a big penitentiary in the middle of the very hot desert, middle of the summer, whatever, spring. And yeah, so very odd situation. So yeah, the guard at the gate motioned for her to roll down her window. He asked her if she was the person who had just tried to go inside and visit the detainees. Did my guard catch you? He asked. Another guard walked up and joined the one who was interrogating her. At this point, Lindsay was boxed in by the truck behind her and two guards in front of her. She was started to worry that they were going to arrest her. The whole thing felt like I was in another country or something. Over the course of her career, Lindsay has made visits to detention facilities around 100 times, she estimated, and she says she's never been treated like that. A few weeks later, she finally managed to get access to the detainees, and then she began to understand what the facility was hiding. Everything I suspected they were doing, she said. That's not very good. So on August 1st, the ACLU, along with Prison Law Office in Berkeley, California, and the Civil Rights Education Enforcement Center in Denver, filed a class action lawsuit in federal court, which enumerated allegations of egregious conditions for detainees in the Federal Correctional Institute in Victorville. In a press release, the ACLU referred to the conditions as a human rights crisis. The suit describes detainees, all of whom are adult men, crying in their beds at night and cutting themselves due to depression and desperation. So, yeah, this is apparently according to the suit. So, detainees told Lindsay that they were locked in their cells for 23 hours a day, or in some cases for days at a time. One asylum seeker she met with had been allowed outside of his cell 3 times in as many weeks, so 3 times in 3 weeks, and had not been given clean clothes since the day he arrived. For 5 weeks, according to the ACLU suit, there were no clocks in the cell block, so detainees had no way of knowing what time it is or how much time had passed, compounding their disorientation. So imagine just being sit in a prison. It's not the nicest place, obviously. It's a prison, penitentiary, and you have no idea what time has passed, no idea how things are going, no idea what you're doing, no idea like when you're going to get out of the place, and really, there's no clear way of knowing how much time has passed. Like you're just kind of floating in there. You're kind of like sifting through life in there, and it's some very disturbing stuff. Yeah, so in the ACLU complaint, one detainee recalled seeing a young man who had sliced himself across his arms and wrists with a razor blade. He wasn't given any mental health services, did not receive any medical care for 3 days. No medical care for 3 days. Another detainee complained to guards for nearly a week about a toothache, seeking medical attention. In response, he was locked in his cell and threatened with pepper spray if he kept complaining. Pepper spray! For complaining about toothache, seeking medical attention in a prison. Let that sink in. Wow. In response, he was locked in, and Michael Kaufman said in response to that, he's a lawyer for the ACLU of Southern Cali, visited the prison in June. He said one guard told a detainee that unless he was dying or had been raped, they wouldn't provide any medical care. Wow. So, yeah, just the level of insensitivity, level of poor treatment out there is astounding. So detainees in FCI Victorville have been routinely prevented from practicing their religions. They're prohibited from praying together. It seems like it's not constitutionally appropriate. Detainees who have asked for Bibles have been denied them. Many of the detainees are Sikh, and they had their turbans confiscated. Even though many Sikhs are vegetarians and matter of faith, the prison have served them meals with meat. One of the detainees reported losing 15 pounds as a result. So no real actual food options, no non-meat meals, no just basic care, basic decency is just out the window in this specific situation. So the ACLU lawsuit describes detainees being served spoiled milk with meat that appeared to be infested with worms or maggots, Some days we just receive sandwiches with nothing in them, just 2 pieces of bread. One detainee complains, and they rush into eating. Meath Sony, who works with Lindsay and has visited detainees at FCI Victorville, they all have to scarf down their food or it's taken away from them. According to the ACLU complaint, detainees are given 5 minutes to eat all their meals in the chow hall. Anything left on their plates is thrown out after those 5 minutes. Wow, that's like, I think people at Guantanamo Bay actually get treated nicer. Like, they get books. Like, imagine these prisoners getting books. Like, it would be just one piece of paper. So, like, write your own book. Wow, that is incredible. That, like, it's really mind-blowing, the poor level of treatment given by, and this is not no private prison corporation. This is our own federal government. This is the government. This is no one else but the government, and it's really some atrocious stuff. So Sony was being told by one detainee. ICE informed him that the detainees was being moved out of the prison. Being moved out of the prison were those who had been separated from their families and people with medical emergencies. Detainees began cutting themselves and trying to break their own bones in order to qualify for a medical transfer. Some detainees have become so despondent they began in their asylum claims and agreed to deportation, even if they face persecution, possibly death, in their home countries. I think that's what this administration wanted. Meath said, she's the attorney who works with Lindsay. Kaufman said he has spoken to numerous attorneys who have worked in the detention centers all over the country and are now seeking to represent detainees at FCI Victorville. They've never seen levels of despair from a group of immigrant detainees as they have seen in this facility. Incredible. And it's been called a warehouse for human beings. Just, again, totally atrocious stuff. To give you an idea of this specific place, FCI Victorville, that is incredibly disturbing. We've all heard a lot about that. But in June, obviously, the Trump administration began using federal prisons in California, Arizona, Texas, Oregon, and Washington state to house immigrant detainees for the first time, having run out of space in regular detention centers as a result of a zero tolerance and family separation policies. FCI Victorville is one of the 5 federal prisons listed for the purpose. With 1,000 detainees at its height, it is by far the biggest. So these are not prisoners, these are detainees. But from the way they've been treated, it's very clear that they are viewed as prisoners to that respect. So, FCI Victorville didn't even have enough prison uniforms to accommodate the new population. So detainees were only given a single set of clothes to wear for the first 2 or 3 weeks of their incarceration, including underwear. Ugh. An ACLU complaint, one detainee recounting using hand soap to wash his prison jumpsuit in the toilet of a cell. Even before detainees were brought in, FCI Victorville was understaffed. Federal prisons are experiencing a staffing crisis because the federal government has put a hiring freeze on them. Margaret Mendelson, a attorney with a prison law office, one of the firms representing some of the Victorville people in this class action lawsuit. Nevertheless, the prison brought in no additional staff to handle the expanded population. The understaffing of Victorville as a result of the detainees' transfer is now so severe that that in the fall, the prison plans to institute a process known as augmentation, which civilian prison staffers, such as nurses, doctors, and teachers, are drafted into roles as correctional officers. So, literally, they're going to have civilian prison staffers, and they will now be put in as correctional officers. So the people who just, make the prison lunches with maggots and the meat, they're going to become the correctional officers now. Jesus Christ. What a mess. And, you got to really wonder, how many more situations are there out there like this? And Victorville, definitely something worth watching. And it really is, in kind of a nutshell, is, sadly, almost a cruel demonstration of the way that they have been, these people have been treated. Just their whole process summed up in a nutshell. Just horrific treatment. And this is the government and only government here, and it's just something that, is chilling really to the bone. There's no other way to say it. Chilling to the bone.